What if I told you there's a recipe that doesn't need a stove, doesn't need a grocery store run, but it creates the fuel for pretty much every living thing on Earth? Well, today we're cracking open nature's most important cookbook to explore the incredible recipe of photosynthesis. I mean, really think about it. How does that actually happen? Does it, what, just eat dirt? The idea that all that stuff, the wood, the leaves, the bark, comes from just soil and water, it just doesn't seem possible. But the real answer is so much cooler, and we're going to break it all down step by step. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to follow this recipe through 5 key stages. First up, we'll get the big picture. Then we'll go shopping for our 3 main ingredients. After that, we'll find the solar-powered kitchen where it all goes down, watch the big chemical cook-off, and finally, see how the end result creates the energy for life itself. All right, let's dive into Chapter 1 of our recipe book, figuring out what this whole secret recipe is actually all about. So, put simply, photosynthesis is kind of like nature's greatest magic trick. It's how a plant can literally look up at the sun, breathe in the air around it, and turn those 2 things into food. Talk about self-sufficient. They're making a meal out of thin air and sunlight. And here's the key thing to remember. Unlike you and me, plants don't eat. They're actually brilliant little chemists, building their own fuel from the most basic stuff you can imagine. They're not consumers. They are creators. Okay, so you can't cook without ingredients. What exactly is on the shopping list for photosynthesis? You might be expecting some long, complicated list, right? But nope, that's it. The recipe just calls for 3 simple things: water, carbon dioxide, and a whole lot of sunlight. So let's see how a plant actually gets its hands on this stuff. Let's tackle that first ingredient, water. It's totally essential, we know that. But how does a plant drink when it doesn't have a mouth? Well, it all starts underground. A plant's roots are like this huge network of tiny straws, constantly sucking up water from the soil. And that water then travels all the way up through the stem, sometimes hundreds of feet into the air, all the way to the leaves. All right, water, check. But what about carbon dioxide? I mean, it's just a gas floating around in the air. How does a plant manage to grab it? Get this. Plants actually breathe through their leaves. It's amazing. If you zoomed way in, you'd find thousands of these little openings called stomata. And these tiny pores open and close, letting the plant literally inhale carbon dioxide right out of the atmosphere. Okay, so we've got our ingredients. Now, every great recipe needs a kitchen. And a plant's kitchen is basically a high-tech, solar-powered marvel. Deep inside a plant's cells, you'll find these incredible little powerhouses called chloroplasts. These are the kitchens. This is the spot where the water and carbon dioxide are brought together, ready for the magic to happen. And of course, every kitchen needs a chef. In this case, the master chef is a molecule called chlorophyll. This is the stuff that gives plants their green color, but more importantly, it's the key player that grabs the energy from sunlight to power this whole operation. All right, the ingredients are prepped, we're in the kitchen, the chef is ready. It is time for the main event, the great chemical cook-off. So, if we zoom in to the molecular level, this is what we're working with. We've got our ingredients: 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water. They're all sitting there in the chloroplast, but nothing's going to happen on its own. We're still missing the most important part: the heat for the oven. The sunlight acts like the power source, providing that jolt of energy needed to kickstart this incredible chemical transformation. And there it is, the full recipe written in the language of chemistry. Now, I know, it looks a little intense, but don't worry. All this formula is really doing is showing us how our starting ingredients get remixed into a final product. So let's just translate that into plain English. You take those 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water, you zap them with some light energy, and they chemically recombine to create 1 molecule of sugar, that's the plant's food, and a super important byproduct, 6 molecules of oxygen. The meal is cooked, but, just like baking a cake is only half the battle, making the food is just step 1. Now, how does the plant actually use this sugar to get the energy it needs to grow and live? That sugar, which is also called glucose, gets shipped over to another part of the cell, the mitochondria. You can basically think of the mitochondria as the cell's engine room. It's where the fuel gets burned to release all its power. And that power is released as a special molecule called ATP. Think of ATP like the rechargeable battery pack for the cell.
It's the universal energy currency that powers absolutely everything a plant does, from sprouting a new leaf to growing another inch taller.
But hang on, remember that byproduct, the oxygen? Well, while the plant uses the sugar as its fuel, the oxygen is basically just a leftover. So the plant does something pretty simple. It exhales it right back into the air through those same tiny holes in its leaves. And that leaves us with this really profound idea, doesn't it? One creature's trash is literally another creature's treasure. A plant's waste product is the very air that you and I need for every single breath we take. It's this silent, constant partnership that connects us all. It really makes you wonder, what other vital connections are happening all around us, completely unseen?